Welcome to the logic lesson where we wire up the work form. So let's pick up right where we left off and go over to our work form, which really is just the other half of our main form. Our main form inserts new records. This form is going to edit existing records. Okay, so this is going to do a lot of the same things that our main form did, our main control. So let's go ahead and first wire up this client, which is going to be just like what we have here. So I'm going to grab the observable collection and I will paste that in the code behind for my work control. And then we'll also make sure we add the using statements. So control dot. That's really a really quick shortcut. It's really helpful. I use it a lot. And then we're going to add our wire up dropdown and initialize client list. And then we'll also paste in those two methods in our constructor. So right away, we've got a working dropdown for our client. Next, we need to add the dropdown for the date. Now, just like with our client's control, and let's go ahead and close out payments. But our client's control, we have the idea of the toggle. So let's go ahead and minimize to our collapsed definitions and look for our toggle field display. Drop down is fine, but then we need to name the date drop down. So x:name equals date stack panel. We'll copy and paste this for hours. And then for title, and then for description, and then again down here for our section that is both the paid and the payment. So I'm going to call this the paid section because I'm also going to name the stack panel for payment because I know I'm going to hide that if they've unchecked the paid. So let's make this the payment stack panel. And I think the only thing left is our submit. We do want to think through, do we want to have a clear for this or not? And I think the answer is we don't need one because of the fact that we're not saying add a new one and therefore clear it out. We're just saying, if we select something here, it's going to update what's down here. So I think we're good with that, but we do need to hide it. Therefore, we have submit form as well. So here's our stack panels. Let's start with date, hours, and title. So the date stack panel, the hours stack panel, the title stack panel, and the payment. Is a payment actually? No. The payment is the internal one. We don't need to hide and show that. But we do need to hide and show the submit form. All right, and so those are all taken care of now, and we've toggled those. So it should be when we start this and go to the work panel, we see just the client, and we do have clients in here. So excellent. Now, once we select something in our client, we need to, let's do select, selection changed. That's what it is. I always forget that for some reason. Selection changed. Once we select something, then we need to show the date and allow them to select something here. So let's do that. Let's go back over here, and we need to show the date stack panel. So date stack panel dot visibility equals visibility dot visible, and we also need to populate that list. So let's look at the payments control, since we know we did that before. So we have let's collapse these to definition. So outline, collapse to definition. And we have let's look for load date dropdown. There we go. Let's grab that. And let's paste it over here. Whoops, not there. Let's paste it right down there. There we go. Let's start with that. We'll say that we need an observable collection, but not of client. It needs to be of work model. And we'll call this work. Okay. And so then back down here, we're going to say select star from work where client ID equals client ID. And we already have that selected. We're already making the call. So now we can say work.clear, and we're going to say work.add from our records. Now we do need to change this to work model. And that should give us what we need in our dropdown. Let's see. And we're not actually calling that. I can tell you this says 0 references. Oops. So when we have a selection changed, we need to actually call this load dropdown or load date dropdown. Now let's run it again, and we'll go over and select work. We'll select I am Tim Corey, and there's no entries for work for I am Tim Corey. Let's change that. So I am Tim Corey, 5 hours testing, and we were testing. And we'll submit. And now we go over to work and select I am Tim Corey. There's still no entries. So we got a problem here. So let's figure out what is going wrong. So we have our client ID, which is the client dropdown.selected value. Let's just make sure this is all the way it should be. So let's put our breakpoint there, and we'll go over to editors, work, client, and immediately we're selecting our list. We have our selected value is 1. That's our client ID. Select work, star from work where client ID equals 1. Okay, and then we're going to grab the records. So let's go ahead and step over this and say the records, there's 2 records, which makes sense. We were testing, that's right. And so, oh, I know why. And we're adding these to our records list, which we have 2 entries. So it's all working in theory. But at the same time, nothing's happening here. That's because we didn't wire up our form. So our date here, if we notice it's a drop down, there's nothing there. So let's go over to our payments and look at how we wired up the date. So the date has no wire up here, but we do have, we wire up in the code behind. So this is the payments control code behind. And we have wire up dropdowns. Wire up client dropdown, which we changed to dropdowns. And then control dot and updated that. And then we need to paste this in, but not payments, it's work. Okay, and now it should be that if we load this up, I took a breakpoint out, by the way. Go to work, go to I am Tim Corey. We should have 2 entries. We do, but nothing's here. And the reason why is because if we look at the work model, and let's go ahead and interestingly, let's grab the work model, wherever that is. Well, it's right here. I'm going to hit F12 there. Notice we don't have date, we have date entered. So we can copy date entered, and we can come back down here and say date entered. We do have an ID though, so that still works. Now if we go over to work, clients, date, there's 2 entries. Okay, so now that we select one, it should open up the rest of the items. So let's hook that up. So once we select something in the date dropdown, we need to say click, not clip, click. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not the click event. That's why. It's selection changed. I'll get one of these times. Okay. So now in the selection changed, the first thing we need to do is toggle our form display to say, yes, I want you to show everything. So that's the first thing we're going to do is show everything. And now we're going to populate the hours, the title, the description. For the entry. So our work model is work entry equals work model, and it's going to be the date dropdown dot selected item. So that's going to give us our work entry, which gives us all the information we need for our fields. So it's over here. Hours, title, and description. Let's start there. So hours text box dot text equals work entry dot hours toString. And then we have our title text box dot text equals work entry dot title dot toString. And then we have our description text box dot text equals work entry dot description. I don't need the toString on title and description. Which let's just see what we call that. Wait, I think we call it the paid checkbox. Yep, paid checkbox. So paid checkbox dot, and then the value equals, or is, I'm sorry, is greater than 0. And if it is, then put 1, otherwise put 0. Okay, that's our conversion. but we had to say that, yes, this is a bool, not a nullable bool. So that's what we did there. And, oops, haha. I'm going the wrong direction. So this was just this right here. That's right. I should have copied and pasted from somewhere else to see the pattern that I did. So this is essentially the if statement. Okay, remember, work entry dot paid. If it's greater than 0, that's true. So we checked. If this is not greater than 0, then it's false. Okay, so that's our is checked. That takes care of that. And now we have our payment. So here's a tricky bit. We need to load all the payments for this client. So let's first look at how we did that over here. Okay, so we need to grab this, how we do this date, populating this dropdown. We need to load that the same way. Okay, so let's grab how we do this first. We'll populate the list and then we'll select the right one after that. So let's grab the load date dropdown, which that's going to be exactly how we do this. We're going to copy that. We also need our observable collection of payments. So we can get that in just a minute. So let's and then we'll populate that as well. So now this load date dropdown, we're going to change to load payment dropdown. Okay, and then we're going to say that the this is the payment, which we grab the client dropdown, which we already have the client dropdown. We're good there, and use that ID to find out all the payments, and we clear out the payments and fill them in. So we're going to do this once we select the once we select the client. That way it's already set. And we just need to wire this up. So don't forget down our wire up, we need to do this as well. But it's not going to be for the date dropdown. We'll fix that. It is payments, but it's not going to be for the date dropdown. It is for the payment dropdown. Okay, so now we have 3 things we're wiring up, but this way we can have a list of all of our payments. Now, before we go any further, let's just see that this actually works. So I go to Editors, Work, I choose I am Tim Corey, the first date, and notice the payments here. I have 2 payments. We're going to work on these payments because right now it displays just the date. I want to have a date and a monetary value. So we're going to work on that, but it does select the correct ones. Okay. Now, so far this is visible, even though this is unchecked. We're going to work on that as well. Okay. But at least we're getting somewhere. We're making some progress. This is the work that's been done. So there's the testing, 5 hours. And we need to go wiring up the, so that when we have a payment, we select the right But I hate doing that. And the reason why is because if I do that, I might forget. Okay, so load payment dropdown. Actually, it's right here on the date dropdown selection changed. This is where I populate everything. I'm going to go ahead and populate it. Let's just do it. So I know I'm going to say that if work entry dot paid is greater than 0, which actually mimics this. But I'm going to say if it's greater than 0, that means that work has been done. The checkbox is checked. Therefore, I should have a value in my my work entry dot payment ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little bit tricky. I'm going to say the payment dropdown dot selected item equals payments dot where payments dot where x equals greater than x dot payment ID, or actually just ID, equals work entry dot payment ID. And then I'm going to say, give me the first, give me first or default. I'm going to put this into a variable. Because I'm a little nervous about what happens on edge cases where it's not found. So let's just cut this for right now and say var selected payment, and then say if selected payment is not equal to null, then say payment dropdown dot selected item equals selected payment. And what it's going to do is going to say, okay, the selected one you want is this one. So we're going to find which one has the matching ID. We're going to grab that one and put it into the dropdown's selected item. And that should overwrite it and go right to that value. We're going to find out once we hit save. But I believe that should work. Let's find out. So we have this set up. We do need to worry about this toggle right here. So if the work entry pay is greater than 0, then we want to make sure that the control is visible. So the control is the payment control, which is payment stack panel. So let's say payment stack panel dot is visible equals, isn't it is visible? Well, that's fine. Equals visibility dot, and that should be visible because we do have a payment. Else, and we set the visibility to collapsed. Okay, so now if we run this, it should collapse because we don't have a selection. So work, client, date, and it is not checked, therefore it's collapsed. If I check it though, nothing changes. We're going to work on that. So now if I make that checkbox, so if I check that, then let's go ahead and put this in the next line. I will say I can do the click event. Handler for paid checkbox click. And so now we have the, we can say, let's show this. So if the paid checkbox dot, and it's not checked, it's is checked. is checked equals true. So it's checked. Then we want to make sure we show the payment stack panel. Else, we want to make sure it's collapsed. Okay, so let's make sure that works. Editors, work, client, date, paid. When I click it, now I can select a payment or not. Before we go much further, let's go ahead and change the models so that we have something besides just date to show. So the payments model, let's do a property here. So public string display value, and just has a get, and it's going to return $, double quotes. Then in here, we're going to say date, like so. And then we're going to have a dash, and then we're going to have amount. Okay, so we have the display value for payment model. So now over here where we have our wiring up, if we're going to do a payments, instead of date, we'll say display value. That should give us a better value to display. Okay, so I paid. Now I can see the dollar amounts for each of those. I could format that really nicely, but what I'm going to do is, because it really is pretty simple, I'll just put a $sign in front, and that'll be it. Now, let's do the same thing for work. So work is going to be, you know what? Work should probably be just title instead of date, because that makes a little more sense, or at least date and then title. So let's do that. Let's do date and then title. So I'll copy this. I'm going to name it the same thing. That way it's very clear that it's doing the same thing as before. So this is going to be the date entered, and this is going to be the title. Okay, and now over here on the work controller, I can change, instead of date entered, it can be display value. And it just changes the way it looks. It is upgrade over what I had before. Now let's go to the payments control and also modify that one for payments to be display, what I call it, the display value. Over here, not over client, in work, if we select some work, we can say paid and this amount, and now we can hit submit, but we don't have submit wired up yet. So let's do that. So let's go over to the submit button, and we're going to say click equals new event handler. And now I can come over to our work and actually fill it in and complete this. So what this is going to do? Well, it's going to do essentially the same thing as what the submit button over here does in payments. So let's look at what it does. Which it's easier to find if we go to submit button and hit F12 on the method. And there we go. So we have it insert a new payment or update a payment, and then we have it reset the form. We don't have a reset form, so let's grab the reset form and the clear data form or method, and let's put those two in first. So we're going to throw a new not implement exception until we can take care of that. And in the meantime, we'll put in our reset form, which we need to, if we reset the form, we need to hide everything using our toggle to false. And we don't need to worry about the is new entry. We can clear the form data. Oh, and there's our toggle right there. So that should be everything. We're going to find out in just a minute. In fact, let's do this. Let's reset the form, and then we'll comment this out temporarily just so we can see that it works. So let's start this. Oops, nope. Clear the form. I did not complete that work. That's great that it yelled at me. So our title description is checked equals false. And we have the, we need to hide that, that payment stack panel. And we can leave the rest alone for that. So let's just make sure that that's going to work. So we can go over to our work, select I am Tim Corey, select our work. I can say submit, which technically right now resets the form. And it does. It clears it out, which that's a problem because, I found another problem. Cool. So let's deal with this problem first. I just threw an exception because Acme has no records. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find out what I can do about that. Well, the date drop-down selection changed. If it's null, I shouldn't do anything. If date drop-down dot selected item equals null, return. So what's going to happen is because the list is empty, it technically changes which one's selected, but it's null. So therefore, we can't really do anything like toggle and all the rest. So we can clear out that form, okay? But the problem is I'm clearing out all the way to the date included, which is a problem because I want to show the date, okay? Because actually, that's a great question. Do I even need a clear? Because if I clear this out, or if I reset the format at all, then what happens is I have to reload everything. And that's not really what I want to do. So let's do this. Let's not reset the form. No form reset, no methods, because really once you've selected something, title and description will be able to be changed, as well as whether or not they've paid and if they made a payment. So let's go over here and create a method, private void update. Let's see what we call these. I believe update payment record. Okay, so update work record, just to be consistent. And now actually let's go ahead and grab our code from here. Again, so it can be consistent in our layouts, even though we'll do less work probably. But update work, set, we're going to set a few things. The hours is right. The amount is not. We're going to do title. We're going to do description. And let's keep going. Let's close it out though and go to the next line and say after description, we also need the paid, and we need the payment ID. Okay, so this will update our values for all of these. Now let's see if we can't get this populated. So we need a validate form. So let's go ahead and grab this version of validate form. I'm sorry, this one right here. And we'll paste that in right above. And this is not payments model, it is work model. We'll need to update this all over here. And now we need to grab the title, which is the title text box dot text. We don't need to parse it. And we'll grab it a couple more times. We need one for description. So we'll grab that. And this is description text box dot text. Now we need the paid, which the paid is going to be an int. So paid. And don't forget that this is the paid checkbox. It's not dot text. It's dot is checked. And then if it's true, then we say 1, else we say 0, and we have to cast this to a bool because otherwise it's a nullable bool. And last, we need to grab the selection from our dropdown if the value is true or checked for this. So what I'm going to do is actually outside of, well, actually above my try, right, or in my try, but still right here. I'm going to say var payment equals, and then I'm going to say, let's grab the payment dropdown dot selected item. Okay, so that's going to tell us this is what was selected. And then we're going to have a var, not do it, an int question mark for a nullable int. And it's going to be a the payment ID. And then what we'll do is we'll say if payment equals null, then payment ID equals null. Else, oops, not double equals, single equals. Else, the payment ID is going to equal payment dot, and that should be payment ID, but because we have not payment model, not cast that, payments model, sorry. There we go. Now we can do control dot here, or control J, I mean, and have the payment ID be the ID. So what we're doing here is if something is selected in the dropdown, then we need to figure out what that is. But the other thing we have to do here is, what if the checkbox is unchecked? There might be a possibility that that dropdown still has values in it. Hopefully it doesn't, but maybe it does. And so I also want to check for that. So what I'm going to do is say if payment, let's swap this around. If payment is not null, let's go ahead and cut this out here and paste it down below. I'm going to cut this out and paste it up here. So I'm going to say if payment is not null, then put the payment ID in here, but I'm going to have an and here. And paid checkbox dot is checked equals true. So the only way to get in here to get the ID is if the payment selected is not null and we've checked the paid checkbox. So otherwise it's going to be null. And now what we can do is we can put that into our model dot payment ID. There we go. And now we have our validate form populated properly and returning. So now we can do our validate form right here. And then we just need to update all of these. So let's start with our ID, which is that's our date dropdown selected value. Then we have our hours, which is our model hours. We don't have an amount. We have a title, and that's our model.title. So let's grab this, and we've got description, paid, and payment. Okay, so description. Then we have our paid, and we have our payment. The item in the date dropdown, which is our work model. So this is our work model. And that's from the date selected or date dropdown selected item. And so now we need to populate all these different items. So need to grab the paid and payment. There we go. So now we've updated that. In theory, that all works. Let's find out if our theory becomes reality. So let's go to work. Let's select Tim Corey. Testing. Yes, we paid that in the $1,500 one. We hit submit and we threw an exception. The method or operation is not implemented. Hey, excellent. I'm actually happy because I didn't wire this up. If I didn't have anything here, it would have just done nothing and I wouldn't have known why. This way I know, oops, I need to actually call the update work record. All right. And that's all you need to do is update work record. So let's try it again. Go to editors, work, client, date, the testing, and I'm going to say that's paid with the $1,500. I hit submit. So we got client work. That was paid with $1,000. Submit. Success. Testing, $1,500. Client work, $1,000. Perfect. Okay? So now our form for editing our client work is wired up. As always, before you end this lesson, make sure that you understand what we're doing here. Make sure that you look through everything. See if you want to tweak anything or add some more bells and whistles. But otherwise, just make sure at least that you understand the code. There's a lot of it, but it's all pretty much the same code repeated. And that's pretty much what programming is the same basic patterns over and over again. So make sure you review it before you move on to the next lesson. But once you're done reviewing it and once you've created it yourself, then go ahead and move on to the next lesson.